I am a great admirer of the Scots. I am quite friendly with the Welsh, especially one of them. I must confess to some sentiment about old Ireland, in spite of the ugly mask she tries to wear. But this is not their night. On this one night in the whole year, we are allowed to use a forgotten, almost a forbidden word. We are allowed to mention the name of our own country, to speak of ourselves as Englishmen, and we may even raise the slogan, St. George for Merry England. There are a few things I will venture to mention about England. They are spoken in no invidious sense. Here it would hardly occur to anyone that the banks would close their doors against their depositors. Here no one questions the fairness of the courts of law and justice. Here no one thinks of persecuting a man on account of his religion or his race. Here everyone, except the criminals, looks on the policeman as the friend and servant of the public. Here we provide for poverty and misfortune with more compassion, in spite of all our burdens, than any other country. Here we can assert the rights of the citizen against the state, or criticize the government of the day, without failing in our duty to the crown or in our loyalty to the king. This ancient, mighty London, in which we are gathered, is still the financial center of the world. From the Admiralty building, half a mile away, orders can be sent to a fleet, which, though much smaller than it used to be, or than it ought to be, is still unsurpassed on the seas. More than 80% of the British casualties of the Great War were English. More than 80% of the taxation is paid by the English taxpayers. We are entitled to mention these facts, and to draw authority and courage from them. Historians have noticed, all down the centuries, one peculiarity of the English people, which has cost them dear. We have always thrown away, after a victory, the greater part of the advantages we had gained in the struggle. The worst difficulties from which we suffer do not come from without, they come from within. They do not come from the cottages of the wage earners. They come from a peculiar type of brainy people, always found in our country, who, if they add something to its culture, take much from its strength. Our difficulties come from the mood of unwarrantable self-abasement into which we have been cast by a powerful section of our own intellectuals. They come from the acceptance of defeatist doctrines by a large proportion of our politicians. But what have they to offer but a vague internationalism, a squalid materialism, and the promise of impossible utopias? Nothing can save England if she will not save herself. If we lose faith in ourselves, in our capacity to guide and govern, if we lose our will to live, then indeed our story is told. If, while on all sides foreign nations are every day asserting a more aggressive and militant nationalism by arms and trade, we remain paralyzed by our own theoretical doctrines, or plunged into the stupor of after-war exhaustion, then indeed all that the croakers predict will come true, and our ruin will be swift and final. Stripped of her empire in the Orient, deprived of the sovereignty of the seas, loaded with debt and taxation, her commerce and carrying trade shut out by foreign tariffs and quotas, England would sink to the level of a fifth-rate power, and nothing would remain of all her glories except a population much larger than this island can support. Why should we break up the solid structure of British power, founded upon so much health, kindliness, and freedom, for dreams which may some day come true, but are now only dreams, and some of them nightmares? We ought as a nation and empire to weather any storm that blows at least as well as any other existing system of human government. We are at once more experienced and more truly united than any people in the world. It may well be that the most glorious chapters of our history are yet to be written. Indeed, the very problems and dangers that encompass us and our country ought to make English men and women of this generation glad to be here at such a time. We ought to rejoice at the responsibilities with which destiny has honored us, and be proud that we are the guardians of our country in an age when her life is at stake.